My daughter told me, "I love you, Mom," and forgot to hang up the phone. What I heard next made my blood run completely cold. The voice of my son-in-law, Kevin, came through clearly. "She really falls for it. The pills are working. Soon she won't even remember where she hid the money." My body froze. I dropped the phone with trembling hands. They were planning to steal everything I had, using my own daughter as an accomplice. My name is Eleanor. I'm 73 years old, and in that moment, I understood that the dementia I thought I was suffering from wasn't real. They were poisoning me slowly, making me believe I was losing my memory to justify stealing my life savings. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated a woman who had survived poverty, widowhood, and family betrayals for decades. That morning had started like any other. I made my coffee in the cream-colored kitchen, with walls my husband had painted 40 years ago. The sun's rays streamed through the window, illuminating the family photographs hanging on the wooden hutch. Pictures of Chloe as a little girl, smiling in her red dresses at school parties, photos from our wedding, of birthdays, of happy Christmases, all a lie now. Chloe had called, just like every Tuesday, asking about my health, telling me to take the vitamins Kevin had gotten for me. Those damned pills that made me feel confused, dizzy, forgetful. "They're for your age, Mom," she would tell me in a sweet voice. "They'll help with your memory." How naive I was to believe her. For months, I had noticed my mind clouding over after taking those pills. I would lose my keys, forget names, struggle to recall recent conversations. Chloe and Kevin insisted it was normal, that it was part of aging. They even suggested that maybe I needed help managing my finances, that they could take care of my bank accounts. The call had ended with our usual ritual. "I love you, Mom," Chloe said, in that voice I now knew was an act. "I love you too, sweetheart," I replied, feeling that warmth in my chest that only a mother can feel. But she didn't hang up. The line stayed connected, and for some reason, I didn't notice right away. I was putting away the coffee mugs when I heard distant voices. At first, I thought they were coming from the television, but then I realized they were coming from the phone I had left on the table. I crept closer, my heart beating faster and faster. "Do you think she's catching on?" It was Chloe's voice, but different, cold, calculating. "Don't be paranoid," Kevin replied, in that arrogant tone that had always bothered me. "The pills are working perfectly. She's more confused every day." My legs began to tremble. I grabbed the back of a chair, trying to process what I was hearing. My own daughter, the child I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, was talking about drugging me as if I were an experiment. "What if someone notices? The neighbors might get suspicious," Chloe insisted. I heard her walking, her heels clicking against the floor. "No one's going to suspect a thing," Kevin assured her. "An old woman developing dementia is the most normal thing in the world. And when she can't remember where she hid the money, we'll have legal power over her finances." That's when I dropped the phone. The sound of the device hitting the tile floor echoed through the kitchen. The call cut off immediately. I stood there, staring at the phone on the ground, as if it were a venomous snake. It all made sense now. The constant visits, the questions about my savings, the insistence on the vitamins, the comments about my supposed mental confusion. I wasn't losing my memory because of old age. I was being systematically poisoned so they could steal the life I had built with so much effort. I sat down on the kitchen floor, next to the broken phone, and for the first time in months, my mind felt completely clear. The rage that surged through my veins was like an awakening. It wasn't dementia. I wasn't losing my mind. It was poison. Poison administered by the two people I trusted most in this world. I picked up the phone with hands that no longer trembled. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. Just like me. Damaged on the outside, but with all my inner strength intact. I got up slowly, feeling every muscle in my body tense with a determination I hadn't felt in years. If they wanted to play dirty, I was going to teach them what a 73-year-old woman could do when she was underestimated. I walked to my bedroom and sat in front of the vanity that had belonged to my mother. My reflection stared back at me, a tired woman with messy gray hair and wrinkles that seemed deeper than they were last week. But my eyes, those brown eyes my husband used to say sparkled like stars, now burned with a flame I thought had been extinguished. I opened the top drawer of the vanity and took out my address book. that old, worn leather book where I kept all my important numbers. I looked for the number of Betty, my neighbor across the street, the only person I knew I could completely trust. Betty had been my confidant for years, the woman who had stood by me at my husband's funeral and who always had a cup of tea ready when I needed to vent. I called her without a second thought. Her voice answered on the second ring. "Hello, Eleanor. How are you, dear?" Her warm tone was such a stark contrast to the coldness I had just heard from my own daughter. "Betty, I need you to come over. It's urgent. And please, don't mention to anyone that you're here." There was a pause. Betty knew my voice well enough to know when something was terribly wrong. "I'm on my way," she said, without asking any questions. While I waited, I went to my closet and pulled down the shoebox I kept on the top shelf. Inside were all my important documents. The deed to the house, bank certificates, my will, insurance policies. There was also my personal journal, where for years I had written down everything I considered important. Dates, conversations, medical expenses. It was all there, documented in my careful handwriting. I flipped through the pages until I reached the last few months. There were the notes about my supposed episodes of confusion. March 15th. Chloe says I forgot to turn off the stove. I don't remember cooking. March 22nd. Kevin found my keys in the refrigerator. How did they get there? April 3rd. I couldn't remember the name of the woman at the bank. Chloe had to help me. Each entry brought more clarity. All these episodes had happened after I took the vitamins. On the days I skipped the pills for whatever reason, my mind worked perfectly. It was so obvious now that I felt foolish for not having noticed it before. The doorbell rang, and I rushed to open it. Betty stood on my doorstep, wearing her olive green dress and a look of genuine concern. "Eleanor, you look terrible. What happened?" She moved past me to enter, and I closed the door with more force than necessary. "Sit down," I told her. "What I'm about to tell you is going to sound incredible, but I need you to believe me." I told her everything. The phone call that didn't disconnect, the voices of Chloe and Kevin, the pills, the episodes of confusion, everything. Betty listened without interrupting, but I saw her eyes widen with each detail. When I finished, she sat in silence for several minutes, processing the information. "My God, Eleanor," she finally murmured. That's elder abuse. It's a federal crime." Her words hit me like a slap. A federal crime. My own daughter was committing a federal crime against me. "Do you have the pills?" she asked. I nodded and went to get the bottle from the bathroom. Betty examined the small white pills. "These don't look like normal vitamins," she said, frowning. "We need to get them analyzed." She looked me straight in the eye. "What do you want to do, Eleanor? We can go to the police right now." "No," I said firmly. "Not yet." Surprise registered on her face. "I need time to think, to plan. If I go to the police now, it will be my word against theirs. And after months of them setting up this story that I have dementia, who is going to believe me?" Betty nodded slowly, understanding my point. "So, what's your plan?" I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The roses my husband had planted were still blooming, defying the passage of time. "I'm going to play their game," I said without turning around. "They're going to think I'm still taking their pills, that I'm still losing my memory. But in reality, I'll be documenting everything, every conversation, every visit, every attempt to manipulate me." "That's dangerous, Eleanor. What's more dangerous is letting them get away with it." I turned to face her. "I have worked my entire life for these savings. I cleaned houses, I sold food, I babysat children, I did everything to secure my future. I'm not going to let two parasites steal what took me decades to build." That afternoon, after Betty left, promising to help me in any way she could, I sat down to make a plan. If Chloe and Kevin wanted to play cat and mouse, I was going to give them the show of their lives. But they didn't know that the mouse had discovered all the traps. I hid the pills in a safe place where I could still take them out of the bottle but without actually swallowing them. Every morning, I would pretend to take one and then spit it out when no one was looking. I would act confused at the right moments, but keep my mind sharp to observe and plan. My phone rang. It was Chloe. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" Her fake voice turned my stomach, but I forced a smile that came through in my tone. "Hello, sweetheart. A little tired, but okay. I just took my vitamins." "Perfect. Mom, I love you so much." When I hung up, I whispered to myself, "I loved you too, Chloe." But that's over now. The next few days were the hardest of my life. Having to feign dementia in front of my own daughter required a strength I didn't know I possessed. Every morning, when Chloe arrived with her fake smile and questions about my health, I had to act like the confused old woman they believed me to be. But inside, my mind was working like a machine, calculating every move. On Wednesday morning, Chloe arrived earlier than usual. She brought a paper bag with my favorite breakfast, pastries from the downtown bakery. "Good morning, Mom," she said, kissing my forehead. "I brought you a treat." Her performance was flawless. If I hadn't heard that phone conversation, I would have believed she was the most loving daughter in the world. I sat at the kitchen table while she made coffee. "Did you take your vitamins yet?" she asked, just like every morning. "What vitamins?" I replied, putting on the lost expression I had been practicing in the mirror. I saw her eyes light up. She thought her plan was working even better than expected. "The ones in your bathroom, Mom. The ones that help with your memory." She went to the medicine cabinet and came back with the bottle. "Here you go." She gave me the pill with a glass of water, watching me as I put it in my mouth. I held it under my tongue until she was distracted pouring the coffee, then I spit it into my napkin. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, sitting across from me. Her tone had changed. It had become more serious. "Kevin and I have been talking about your situation. We think it might be better if we helped you with your finances. You know, so you don't have to worry about paying bills or dealing with the bank." There it was, the first real move. I maintained my confused expression. "My finances? But I manage my money just fine." "Mom, yesterday you told me you couldn't remember if you paid the electric bill, and last week you couldn't find your checkbook." That was a lie. I had never told her that, but she was building her narrative. "I don't remember saying that," I mumbled, rubbing my temples as if my head hurt. "Exactly. Mom, that's why you need help. It's not your fault. It's normal, at your age." Her hand rested on mine, the hand that had once soothed my childhood nightmares when I soothed hers. Now that same hand was lying to me with every touch. "What would I have to do?" I asked, keeping my voice small and uncertain. "Just sign some papers that let Kevin manage your accounts. He studied accounting, remember? He'll take very good care of you." Kevin had never studied accounting. He sold insurance and had barely finished high school. But I played along. "Kevin will take care of my money?" "Yes, Mom. And I'll oversee everything. We're family. We would never hurt you." Every word was like a knife in my chest. "Okay," I said finally. "If you think it's for the best." I saw her relax, as if she had won the first battle. That afternoon, after she left, I called Betty. "I need your help," I told her. "They're coming tomorrow with papers for me to give them control of my finances." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. "And what are you going to do?" "I'm going to sign them," I replied. Her gasp of surprise made me pull the phone away from my ear. "Eleanor, have you really lost your mind?" "Listen to me," I said firmly. "I'm going to sign, but first I'm going to move all my money. I'm going to empty my accounts and open new ones at another bank, under a slightly different name. When they get access to my original accounts, they're going to find exactly $5. The plan was perfect in its simplicity. For years, I had used my full name at the banks, Eleanor Guadalupe Morales Hernandez. But on my birth certificate, my middle name was listed as Guadalupe Marie, a detail very few people knew. I could open new accounts using that legal variation of my name, and they would technically still be my legitimate accounts. "That's brilliant," Betty admitted, after I explained everything. "But you'll need help moving that much money without them getting suspicious." She was right. My savings were considerable. Decades of hard work, life insurance policies, the sale of properties my husband and I had bought when we were young. I couldn't move it all at once without raising red flags. "Do you know someone at a bank who can help us discreetly?" I asked. Betty thought for a moment. "My nephew, Mark, works at National Bank. He's a private accounts manager. We could trust him. Can you call him first thing in the morning?" I need to move everything before Chloe and Kevin get here with their papers. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room recliner, looking at the family photos hanging on the orange walls of the hallway. There was a photo of Chloe at 15, smiling in her green dress at her sweet 16 party. I had worked extra for months to afford that party. Another photo showed her on her college graduation day, proudly holding her diploma. I had sold my mother's jewelry to pay for her studies. At what point had she become this person? When had she decided that stealing from her own mother was acceptable? I tried to remember signs, clues that something was wrong, but I couldn't find any. She had always been a seemingly loving and attentive daughter. Maybe the problem was Kevin. I had never liked that man. From the first day Chloe introduced him, something about him made me uneasy. The way he looked at my house, evaluating, calculating, the questions he asked about my finances, disguised as family concern, the comments about how big the house was for one person. Early Thursday, Betty arrived with her nephew, Mark. He was a man in his 40s, well-dressed, with a genuine smile that reminded me of his aunt. "Mrs. Hernandez," he said, shaking my hand. "Betty explained your situation. What they're doing to you is terrible, but we're going to fix it." Mark had brought all the necessary paperwork. In less than 2 hours, he had transferred all my money to new accounts under my full legal name. My original accounts were left practically empty, with just enough to cover the month's automatic payments and prevent them from being closed for inactivity. "What if they discover the new accounts?" I asked him. "Impossible," Mark assured me. "They're at a completely different bank, under a legal variation of your name. They would have to hire a private investigator to find these accounts, and that would cost them more money than they probably have." At 3 in the afternoon, Chloe arrived accompanied by Kevin. He carried a black briefcase and that fake smile I knew so well. "Hello, mother-in-law," he said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. His breath smelled like cheap cigars. "How are you feeling today?" "A little confused," I replied, using my most fragile voice. "Chloe explained that you're going to help me with my banking." "Exactly," Kevin said, opening his briefcase. "We have all the documents here. They're very simple. You just need to sign where the yellow tabs are." The papers were more complicated than Chloe had told me. They didn't just give them power over my finances. They also named them as my primary heirs, bypassing my other relatives. There were clauses about mental incapacity that would allow them to make medical decisions for me. It was a document that basically made me their legal prisoner. "It's a lot of paper," I said, pretending to be overwhelmed. "It couldn't be simpler." "Mom, we know it's confusing," Chloe said with that sweet voice that now made me nauseous. "But it's necessary to protect you. Imagine if someone tried to take advantage of you." The irony of her words was almost comical. I signed each document slowly, making my hand tremble as if it were difficult. Kevin watched each signature like a hawk, making sure it was done correctly. "Perfect," he said when I was finished. "Now you don't have to worry about a thing, mother-in-law. We'll take care of everything." "When are you going to start managing my accounts?" I asked. "We're going to the bank tomorrow morning," Kevin replied. "We'll get everything organized so your expenses are paid automatically and your money is safe." Safe in their pockets, I thought. After they left, I sat in my kitchen and, for the first time in days, I smiled a genuine smile. They had just signed their own financial death warrant. Tomorrow they would go to the bank, full of expectations, only to discover they had gained access to practically empty accounts. But that was just the first step. I had to prepare for their reaction when they discovered there was no money to steal. And I knew that reaction wasn't going to be pretty. Friday morning, I woke with a strange feeling in my stomach. I knew the call would come at any moment. Kevin and Chloe had gone to the bank expecting a fortune and had instead found nearly empty accounts. I made a coffee and sat by the phone, waiting. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:30, my phone rang with an urgency that almost made me jump. It was Chloe, but her voice no longer had the feigned sweetness of the past few days. "Mom, where is your money?" The question was direct, no preamble, no greeting. "My money?" I replied with the same confusion I had been acting. "What money, dear? The money in your accounts. We went to the bank, and there's only $3,000 in total. Where is everything else?" Her voice was rising, and I could hear Kevin talking furiously in the background. "I don't know what you're talking about, Chloe. That's all my money." I kept my voice small and confused. "Impossible. You had much more money than that. What did you do with it?" The accusation in her voice hurt more than I expected, even though I knew it was part of my act. "I don't remember doing anything with money," I murmured. "Maybe I spent it? I don't remember things well anymore." I heard Kevin snatch the phone from her. "Mother-in-law, this is very serious. We need you to think hard. Haven't you withdrawn any money recently? Haven't you made any transfers?" "I don't know what transfers are," I lied. "I only use money to buy food and pay the light bill." Kevin growled in frustration. "We're on our way over," he said before hanging up. They arrived in less than an hour, and I could see the tension on their faces as they got out of the car. Kevin had that furious look that had always given me chills, and Chloe looked on the verge of tears. But they were no longer tears of sadness, but of frustration and greed. "Mom, sit down," Chloe ordered as soon as they came in. Her tone was completely different. The pretense of affection was gone. "We need to talk seriously." I sat in my favorite chair by the window and maintained the lost expression I had practiced so well. "Where is your money?" Kevin asked, planting himself in front of me like an interrogator. "I already told you. At the bank. There's only $3,000 at the bank. You had over 500,000. The figure surprised me. They had been spying on my finances more than I thought. 500,000? I repeated, my eyes wide. "I've never had that much money." It was another lie, of course. I had quite a bit more than that, but they didn't need to know. "Of course you did," Chloe shouted. "We've seen it. Your bank statements." There it was confirmation that they had been going through my papers behind my back. "I don't remember," I said simply. "Maybe I was robbed." There are a lot of thieves around here. The irony of my comment was not lost on Kevin, who clenched his fists. "Nobody robbed you," Kevin said through gritted teeth. "The money has to be somewhere. Don't you have other accounts? At other banks?" "I only have the account at People's Bank," I replied. "It's the only one I've ever had." Kevin started pacing my living room like a caged animal. "This can't be. Money doesn't just disappear like that." He stopped in front of me. "Haven't you given money to anyone? To a relative? To the church?" "I don't have any other relatives," I said with genuine sadness. "And at church, I only give my $10 on Sundays." Chloe slumped onto the sofa, her head in her hands. "This is a disaster," she mumbled. "We were counting on that money." Her words were a confession. They confirmed they had never planned to care for me or protect me. They just wanted my money. "What did you need my money for?" I asked with feigned innocence. "Are you in trouble?" Kevin and Chloe exchanged a tense glance. "It's not trouble," he said. "It's just... we had made some plans." "What kind of plans?" I pushed. I wanted them to keep talking, to reveal more. "Plans for the future," Chloe answered vaguely. "To buy a bigger house. For Kevin's business. More lies. If they had wanted my money for something legitimate, they would have asked me directly instead of drugging and manipulating me." "And what are you going to do now?" I asked. Kevin moved closer to me, and for the first time I felt real fear. His expression had changed. It had become more aggressive. "We're going to find that money," he said in a low voice, "even if we have to turn this house upside down." "You're going to search my house?" "If we have to, yes," Chloe replied, and her voice sounded strange, as if it wasn't her speaking. "Mom, that money has to be somewhere. Maybe you hid it somewhere, and you don't remember." The idea wasn't far-fetched. Many elderly people hid cash in their homes, distrustful of banks. "You think I have money hidden here?" I asked. "Of course," Kevin exclaimed. "That's why we're going to check everything." Without waiting for my permission, they started searching. Kevin went straight to my bedroom while Chloe rummaged through the kitchen. I could hear them moving furniture, opening drawers, checking behind paintings. It was surreal to see my own daughter tearing my house apart, looking for a treasure that didn't exist. From my chair, I watched as Kevin came out of my bedroom with my jewelry in his hands. "This is worth something," he shouted to Chloe. It was the jewelry my husband had given me over the years, pieces that held more sentimental than monetary value. "Not much," she replied without even looking. "Hey," I protested, Getting up from my chair, "That's my jewelry." Kevin looked at me with contempt. "If you don't have money, at least this can be useful for something." He was planning to sell my wedding jewelry, the only things I had left of my husband. "You can't take my things," I said, trying to sound stronger. "Of course we can," Chloe replied from the kitchen. "We have legal power over you, remember? We can make whatever decisions we think are best for your well-being." They were using the documents I had signed the day before to justify outright theft. It was brilliant in its cruelty. Technically, they had the legal right to manage my assets, and I had faked dementia so convincingly that any protest from me could be dismissed as senile confusion. They continued searching for 2 hours. They checked every corner of the house, moved all the furniture, emptied every drawer. They even pried up some floor tiles, looking for a safe or some hiding place. They found nothing, of course, because there was nothing to find. When they were done, my house looked like a war zone. Furniture out of place, drawers open, clothes thrown on the floor. Chloe was sweating, and Kevin's hands were dirty from searching. "There's nothing," he said, wiping his hands on his pants. "Now what?" Chloe asked. Her frustration was palpable. They had counted on my money for something important, and now they were empty-handed. "We have to think," Kevin replied. "The money couldn't have just disappeared. There has to be an explanation." They left that afternoon without saying goodbye, leaving me in my trashed house. But I didn't care about the mess. I cared about the revelation of who they truly were. There were no more doubts, no more room for the hope that maybe it was all a misunderstanding. My daughter and her husband were thieves, and they were willing to destroy my life to get what they wanted. That night, as I picked up the pieces of my home, I called Betty. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than expected," I replied. "They're desperate. They're going to make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind of mistakes people make when they're desperate for money. They're going to try something more drastic." I was right. When greedy people don't get what they want the easy way, they always resort to more extreme methods. And when that happened, I would be ready. The next few days were strangely quiet. Chloe didn't call, she didn't visit, she didn't ask about my health. It was as if she had completely disappeared from my life. But I knew this calm was deceptive. I knew my daughter, and when things didn't go her way, she became unpredictable and dangerous. On Tuesday afternoon, while I was watering the plants in the garden, I saw an unfamiliar car parked in front of my house. A man in a gray suit got out and walked toward my door. He had a folder in his hands and the serious expression of a lawyer or a government official. My heart sped up. "Mrs. Eleanor Morales?" he asked, when I opened the door. "Yes, that's me. I'm Dr. Evans, a geriatric psychiatrist. Your daughter hired me to conduct an evaluation of your mental capacity." His words hit me like a bucket of cold water. Chloe had taken the next step. "An evaluation?" I asked, feigning confusion. "I don't understand." "It's routine, ma'am. Your family is concerned for your well-being and wants to ensure you receive the proper care." His smile was professional, but cold. It was clear he was just doing a job. "May I come in?" he asked. "It will just be a conversation." I had no choice. If I refused, it would be evidence that something was wrong. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Would you like some coffee?" We sat in the living room, and he opened his folder. "I'm going to ask you a few basic questions, all right?" I nodded, mentally preparing for the most important performance of my life. "Can you tell me what day it is today?" "Tuesday," I replied. "What is the date? I'm not sure." "The 15th?" It was the 18th, but I had to seem confused. "Do you remember what you had for breakfast today?" "I think coffee." "Yes, coffee, but I don't remember if I ate anything else." "Can you tell me the name of the current president?" I paused for a moment, frowning as if struggling to remember. "Obama," I said finally. He hadn't been president for years, but it was the kind of confusion someone with dementia would have. The doctor was constantly taking notes. "Do you manage your own finances?" "My daughter helps me now," I replied. "It's very hard for me to remember the numbers." "Do you remember signing any documents recently?" "Documents? No." "Well, maybe. Chloe brought some papers, but I don't remember what they said." He continued with more questions. My date of birth, my late husband's name, my address, my medications. I answered some correctly, and others with deliberate confusion. It was a delicate balance. I had to appear mentally impaired, but not completely incompetent. Do you take any medication for your memory? He asked. Yes, some vitamins Chloe gives me. Do you know what they're called? No, they're small, white pills. I didn't mention I hadn't taken them in weeks. Do they help? I'm not sure. I keep forgetting things. After an hour, he closed his folder. That's all for now, Mrs. Morales. You've been very cooperative. He stood to leave, but before reaching the door, he turned. Your daughter has asked me to recommend that you consider an assisted living facility. There are some very good places where they can take better care of you. My blood ran cold. A nursing home. Of course. If they had me declared mentally incompetent and locked me away in an institution, they would have total control over whatever was left of my assets. It was the perfect plan. A home? I asked in a small voice. Why? I'm fine here. Your daughter is worried about your safety. Living alone can be dangerous for someone in your condition. But this is my house, I mumbled. I understand, but sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for our own good. After he left, I sat in my living room, shaking with rage. It wasn't just about money anymore. They wanted my freedom, my house, my life. They wanted to erase me completely to get access to everything I had built. I called Betty immediately. They're coming for me, I said as soon as she answered. Who? A psychiatrist. Chloe sent him to have me declared insane. There was a tense silence. What are you going to do? I need to speed up my plans. I can't wait any longer. That night, I took out all the documents I had been saving. Statements from my new bank accounts, copies of the transfers I had made, voice recordings I had been making every day, documenting everything. I also had the pills I was supposed to be taking, saved in a small vial as evidence. But I needed more. I needed direct proof of their intentions. A confession, a recorded conversation, something that couldn't be denied or explained away, and I had an idea of how to get it. The next day, I called Chloe. Sweetheart, I said in a trembling voice, I'm so confused. A doctor came yesterday, and I didn't understand what he wanted. It's okay, Mom. It was just a routine checkup. Are they going to take me to a hospital? It's not a hospital, Mom. It's a place where they'll take better care of you than I can. You don't love me anymore? I asked, injecting as much sadness as possible into my voice. Of course I love you, but I can't take care of you the way you need anymore. It's too hard for me. Her words sounded rehearsed, as if she'd practiced this conversation. When are they taking me? Soon, Mom. Kevin is arranging the paperwork. And my house? Who's going to take care of my house? Don't worry about that. We'll take care of everything. Of course they would, by selling my house and keeping the money. Can you come see me today? I asked. I want to talk to you. I can't today, Mom. I'm very busy. Please, Chloe. I'm scared. My breaking voice must have touched something in her, because she sighed. All right. I'll come by in the afternoon, but just for a little while. She arrived at 5, accompanied by Kevin as always. But this time, they brought more papers. Mom, we need you to sign this, Kevin said without preamble. What is it? It's for the home where you'll be living. They need your authorization for admission. I looked at the papers. They were voluntary admission forms, but I knew that once I signed them, there would be nothing voluntary about my stay. When are they taking me? Tomorrow, Chloe replied. We've already paid for the first month. With what money? I asked, feigning confusion. With your money, Mom? That's why we needed access to your accounts. It was another lie. My accounts were empty, so they must have paid with their own money they didn't have and hoped to recover from my supposed hidden fortune. But I don't have any money, I said. We've looked, and we couldn't find anything. Kevin tensed. The money will turn up, mother-in-law. These things take time. And what if it doesn't? It will, he insisted, but his voice sounded less certain. I signed the papers with a trembling hand, making sure my signature looked less firm than on previous documents. Everything had to appear consistent with my supposed mental decline. Can I take my things? I asked. Just the basics, Chloe replied. Clothes, toiletries. You won't need much else. My photos? Maybe one or two. The coldness in her voice broke my heart. She was willing to separate me even from my memories. What if I want to leave? The home has rules, Mom. You can't just leave on your own in your condition. After they left, I knew the time had come. I couldn't wait any longer. Tomorrow they would come for me, take me to an institution where I would be completely at their mercy, and then it would be impossible to prove it had all been a sham. I called Betty. I need you to do me a favor. Tomorrow morning, before they arrive, I want you to come over with a video camera. We're going to record everything. Are you sure? It's risky. It's my only chance. If they take me to that place, it's all over. That night, I wrote a letter addressed to the authorities, explaining the entire situation. I signed it with my clearest handwriting and dated it carefully. I also prepared all my bank documents, the pills they had been giving me, and a detailed timeline of everything that had happened. If I was going down, I wasn't going down alone. And if Chloe and Kevin thought they could lock me up and steal everything, they were about to discover they had gravely underestimated a woman who had survived 73 years of a hard life. The war was about to begin, and I intended to win. The morning of the day they were going to take me to the nursing home, I woke before dawn. I had slept very little, but my mind was clearer than ever. I knew the next few hours would determine the rest of my life. Either I would succeed in exposing the truth, or I would lose everything forever. Betty arrived at 7 in the morning with a small video camera she had borrowed from her granddaughter. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as she adjusted the device. "It's the only way," I replied. "If I don't document what happens today, no one will believe me later." We hid the camera behind some books on the living room shelf, aimed at the sofa where I knew they would have me sit to talk. Betty would stay in the kitchen, out of the camera's view but where she could hear everything. "What if they notice?" she asked. "They won't. They're so focused on their plan they won't notice anything else." At 9 o'clock sharp, Chloe and Kevin arrived with a suitcase. "Good morning, Mom," Chloe said in that fake voice I knew so well. "Are you ready?" I had dressed in my oldest dress, a brown one that was a bit too big, to look more frail. "I think so," I replied in a small voice. "Although I still don't understand why I have to leave." "We've already explained, Mom. It's for your own good." Kevin surveyed the house, as if it were already his. "Did you pack your medicine?" "What medicine?" I asked, feigning confusion. "The vitamins we give you," Chloe replied with a sigh. "They're in the bathroom." She went to get the pills and returned with the bottle. "You have to keep taking these at the home," she said. "They're very important for your health." "What are they for exactly?" I asked, looking directly at the hidden camera. I needed her answer on tape. "For your memory, Mom, so you don't get worse." It was such a colossal lie that I struggled to keep my expression neutral. Those pills were exactly what had been making me worse. "And if I don't take them, what happens?" "You'll get worse," Kevin answered. "That's why it's important you stick to the treatment." Betty emerged from the kitchen. "Good morning," she said with a forced smile. "I came to say goodbye to Eleanor." Chloe didn't look happy to see her, but she couldn't say anything without seeming rude. "Hello, Mrs. Gable." "Yes, we're leaving now." "Where are you taking her, exactly?" Betty asked, keeping a casual tone. "To a specialized facility," Kevin replied. "A place where they can better care for people with problems like hers." "What kind of problems?" Betty insisted. It was perfect. She was getting them to explain their false diagnosis themselves. "Mom has dementia," Chloe said directly. "She can't live alone anymore. It's dangerous for her." "Dementia?" Betty repeated, feigning surprise. "But we were talking yesterday, and she seemed fine." "The symptoms come and go," Kevin explained. "That's what makes it so dangerous." "And who's going to look after the house while she's away?" Betty asked. Chloe and Kevin exchanged a look. "We'll take care of it," he replied. "Someone has to maintain the property." "You're moving in here?" "Maybe," Chloe said vaguely. "Depending on how Mom's situation develops." I knew exactly what that meant. Once they had me locked away, they would sell my house and keep the money. It was all perfectly planned. "And what if I want to come back?" I asked in an innocent voice. Can I come back whenever I want? That will depend on the doctors, Kevin replied. They will evaluate if you're well enough to live alone. In other words, never. Once I was inside, they would make sure I never got out. How much does the home cost? Betty asked. It was a brilliant question. Kevin tensed up. That's none of your business, he told her coldly. We just want to know if Eleanor will be well taken care of, Betty insisted. Of course she will, Chloe replied. It's a very good place. It costs $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month. With the empty bank accounts they had found, where were they going to get that money every month? It was obvious they either expected to find my real savings eventually, or they planned to sell my house quickly. That's a lot of money, Betty commented innocently. How are you going to pay for it? That's already been taken care of, Kevin replied, but his discomfort was obvious. Mom has resources. I thought you said you didn't find any money in her accounts, Betty said. She was perfect at asking these awkward questions. The money will turn up, Kevin insisted. These things take time. His frustration was starting to show. And if it doesn't, it will, he repeated, but his voice sounded less convinced. I slowly stood up from the sofa. Can I use the restroom before I go? Of course, Mom. But hurry up. We don't want to be late. I went to the bathroom and took the opportunity to hide a small voice recorder in the pocket of my dress. Betty had gotten it for me, and although the camera was capturing everything in the living room, I wanted an audio backup for any conversations I might have on the way. When I returned, Kevin was reviewing the papers I had signed the day before. Everything's in order, he mumbled. Are you ready? Chloe asked me. I nodded with feigned resignation. I suppose so. Betty hugged me at the door. Take care, she whispered in my ear. Everything is going to be all right. In a normal voice, she added, I'll come visit as soon as I can. I don't think they allow visitors at first, Kevin said quickly. It's part of the adjustment process. Of course they wouldn't allow visitors. They couldn't risk someone realizing I didn't have actual dementia. Not even Betty? I asked sadly. She's my only friend. Maybe later on, Chloe replied without conviction. We got into Kevin's car. I sat in the back, like a prisoner being transported. During the drive, they talked between themselves as if I wasn't there. Do you think Dr. Evans will confirm the diagnosis? Chloe asked. Of course, Kevin replied. He saw exactly what he needed to see. And what if someone questions her being admitted? No one will question anything. We have all the legal papers, the psychiatric evaluation, her signed consent. It's perfect. Their confidence made me sick, but it also reassured me. They were so sure of their plan they weren't taking any precautions. How long do you think it will take to find the money? Chloe asked. Not long. Once she's admitted, we can search the house properly. We can also hire someone to check if she has other bank accounts. And what if she really doesn't have any more money? She does, Kevin insisted. A woman like her, who worked her whole life and never spent a dime, has to have savings somewhere. We arrived at the nursing home, a 2-story white building that looked clean but cold. A sign at the entrance read, The Golden Meadows Residence, Specialized Care for Seniors. Kevin parked, and we all got out. The director of the home, a middle-aged woman in a pink dress, greeted us at the entrance. Good morning, Morales family. I'm Miss Thompson. She addressed Chloe and Kevin mainly, barely glancing at me. Did you bring all the documentation? It's all here, Kevin replied, handing her a folder. The psychiatric evaluation, the consent forms, the admission authorization, perfect. And the medication? Here are her vitamins, Chloe said, giving her the pill bottle. It's very important she takes them every day. Of course. Our medical staff will handle the administration of all appropriate medications. Miss Thompson finally looked at me. Mrs. Morales, how are you feeling today? Confused, I answered honestly. I don't really understand why I'm here. That's normal, ma'am. Many of our residents feel that way at first. But you'll see. You'll feel right at home soon. Her professional smile didn't reach her eyes. It was clear that to her, I was just another number, another monthly payment. Can I see my room? I asked. Of course. Family. Would you like to accompany her? Yes, Chloe replied. We want to make sure she's comfortable. We walked down a long hallway that smelled of disinfectant. The walls were painted a pale yellow that was supposed to be cheerful but just seemed depressing to me. My room was small and Spartan. A single bed, a small closet, a chair by the window. This is where I'll live? I asked. It's temporary, Mom, Chloe assured me, just until you feel better. But I knew that to her better meant dead. Miss Thompson explained the rules of the place. Strict schedules for meals, medication administered by nurses, no leaving without medical authorization, limited and supervised visits. It was a prison disguised as a home. When can you leave? I asked, feigning sadness. We're leaving now, Mom, Chloe replied, but she seemed relieved to be able to drop me off. We'll come visit you soon. I knew it was a lie. I watched them leave from my bedroom window. As soon as their car disappeared from view, I took out the recorder I had hidden and checked that it had recorded the entire conversation from the trip. It was all there, every incriminating word. Now I had to find a way to get out of there and use all the evidence I had gathered. But that would have to wait. First, I needed to observe, learn the routines of the place, and find the perfect moment to act. My revenge was just beginning. My first night at the Golden Meadows residence was a silent nightmare. I lay in that strange bed, listening to the groans and murmurs of other residents through the thin walls. Some clearly had real dementia. Others were simply abandoned by families who no longer wanted them. But I was neither of those things. I was a prisoner of my own daughter. At 6 a.m, a nurse entered without knocking. Good morning, Mrs. Morales. Time for your medication. She was a young woman in a white uniform with a bored expression. She handed me a small plastic cup with the pills Chloe had brought. What are they? I asked, maintaining my active confusion. Your memory vitamins, she replied automatically. Open up. I had no choice. She placed the pills on my tongue and gave me water, watching as I swallowed. But I had perfected the technique over weeks. I held them under my tongue until she left, then spat them into a napkin. Breakfast was in a large dining room with round tables. I sat with 3 other residents who seemed lost in their own worlds. A woman named Martha constantly mumbled about her children who never visited. An older man named Frank complained that his wallet had been stolen, though it was clear he didn't remember where he had put it. Are you new? A woman with gray hair, who seemed more alert than the others, asked me. Her name was Isabel, and she had been in the facility for 2 years. Yes, I arrived yesterday, I replied. Why are you here? My family says I have memory problems. Ah, like all of us, Isabel sighed. I used to protest too, but I've gotten used to it now. Her words sent a chill down my spine. How many people in this place were here against their will? How many had been declared incompetent by greedy families? Does your family visit you? I asked her. They did at first, but they hardly ever come anymore. They say I'm too far gone, that I don't recognize them. But Isabel seemed perfectly lucid. Over the next few days, I established a routine. In the mornings, I pretended to take my medication, ate breakfast in silence, and then spent time in the common room, observing. In the afternoons, I sat in my room planning my escape, because that was exactly what I had to do, escape. The problem was that the Golden Meadows residence had strict security measures. The main doors were code-locked, there were cameras in the hallways, and the staff did regular head counts of the residents. Any escape attempt would be noticed immediately. But I had an advantage no one suspected. My mind was perfectly clear. While everyone believed I was demented, I could observe, plan, and calculate without anyone realizing it. It was like being invisible in my own revenge. On the 5th day, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Dr. Evans, the psychiatrist who had evaluated me at my house. Good morning, Mrs. Morales. How are you adjusting? I don't like it here, I told him honestly. I want to go home. I understand it's difficult, but this is the best place for you right now. He sat across from me with his notebook. Have you been taking your medication? I think so. The nurses give it to me. Have you noticed any improvement in your memory? I don't remember, I replied. And it wasn't a lie. I didn't remember anything being wrong because I had never had real memory problems. Your daughter has been asking about your progress. She's very worried about you. Chloe asked about me. My heart sped up. Maybe there was a part of her that still loved me. Yes, she wants to know if you're responding well to the treatment. When can she come visit me? That depends on your emotional stability. Family visits can sometimes be disruptive for patients in your condition. It was a lie. Chloe didn't want to see me because she was afraid I would say something inconvenient. And the doctor was complicit in keeping me isolated. How long am I going to be here? I asked. That's difficult to predict. Your condition is progressive, Mrs. Morales. It's possible this will be your permanent home now. Permanent home. The words echoed in my head after he left. They wanted me to die here, forgotten and alone, while they enjoyed my inheritance, but they had been wrong to underestimate me. That night, I pretended to be asleep when the night nurse made her rounds. Once she had passed, I got up silently and went to my bedroom window. I was on the second floor, but there was a drain pipe running right alongside it. It was risky, but not impossible. I went back to my bed and began planning my escape for the early morning. But first, I needed to do something else. I took out the small cell phone I had managed to hide in my undergarments since the first day. It was an old device I had bought years ago that no one knew I had. I called Betty, keeping my voice very low. Eleanor? My God, are you okay? I can't talk long, I whispered. I need your help. Tomorrow at 3 a.m. Come get me in the alley behind the home. I'm coming out the window. Are you crazy? You'll kill yourself. It's my only chance. If I stay here, they win. What do you want me to do after I pick you up? Take me to Mark's house. He can help me with the legal side of things. I have all the evidence I need to expose them. Betty agreed, though I could hear the fear in her voice. I hung up and prepared for the most important night of my life. At 2:30 a.m, I dressed in my darkest clothes and tied my bedsheets together to make a makeshift rope. It was risky, but I had climbed worse obstacles in my youth. I opened the window slowly, trying not to make a sound. The cold morning air hit my face. I looked down and calculated the distance. It was doable, but I had to be careful. One wrong move and it would all end badly. I tied one end of my sheet rope to the room's radiator and dropped the other end out the window. It didn't reach the ground, but it got me close enough to use the drain pipe for the rest of the descent. I took a deep breath and started to climb down. My 73-year-old hands clung to the sheets with a strength I didn't know I still had. Foot by foot, hand over hand, I descended the side of the building like a fugitive in the night. When I reached the end of my makeshift rope, I managed to grab onto the drain pipe. It was cold and slippery, but I managed to slide the rest of the way to the ground. My legs trembled when I hit solid earth, but I had done it. I ran to the back alley where Betty was waiting in her old car. I can't believe you did it, she whispered as I got into the passenger seat. Let's go before they notice, I told her. We drove in silence for several minutes. I was constantly checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see patrol car lights chasing us. But there was no one. My escape had been successful. Where are we going? Betty asked. To Mark's house. He lives on the outskirts of the city. During the drive, I told her everything that had happened at the home, the forced pills, the isolation, the conversation with the doctor. It's a complete conspiracy, I muttered. They're all involved. We arrived at Mark's house at 4 a.m. We had to wake him up, but when I explained the situation, he let us in immediately. This is very serious, he said after hearing my story. We're talking about multiple crimes: elder abuse, fraud, administration of unauthorized substances, unlawful confinement. What can I do? I asked him. First, we're going to officially document everything. Then we're going to file criminal and civil complaints. But we need to act fast. As soon as they realize you've escaped, they're going to try to cover their tracks. Mark was right. In a few hours, they would probably discover my absence at the home. Chloe and Kevin would panic when they realized their perfect victim had disappeared. But this time, I was ready for battle. I took out all the documents I had saved, the recordings, the pills as evidence, the bank papers, the timeline of events. I have everything we need, I told Mark. Now we just need to use all of this to destroy them. We're going to do more than destroy them, Mark replied with a grim smile. We're going to make sure they pay for every day of suffering they caused you. My revenge was about to officially begin. At 7 in the morning, Mark's phone rang insistently. It was exactly what we had been waiting for. "Good morning," he answered in a professional voice. "Yes, this is Eleanor Morales' attorney." I could hear Chloe's hysterical voice on the other end of the line, though not the exact words. "I understand your concern," Mark continued, maintaining a calm tone. "Yes, I am aware that Mrs. Morales has left the residence. In fact, she is here with me right now." There was a tense silence, then louder shouting. "No, it was not a kidnapping. She came of her own free will." He handed me the phone. "She wants to talk to you." I took a deep breath before taking the call. "Hello, Chloe." "Mom, where are you? We're desperate. The home called us saying you had disappeared." Her voice sounded genuinely worried, but I was no longer fooled by her performances. "I'm fine, dear. I'm where I need to be." "But Mom, you escaped out of a window. You could have been killed. Why would you do that?" "Because I didn't want to be locked up in that place anymore." My voice was firm, with no trace of the confusion I had been faking for weeks. There was a pause. I could hear Kevin talking quickly in the background. "Mom, you're confused. You need to go back to the home so they can take proper care of you." "I'm not confused, Chloe. In fact, I've never been clearer in my life." "What do you mean?" Her voice had changed. It no longer sounded worried. It sounded nervous. "I mean, I know exactly what you were doing to me. The pills, the manipulation, the theft. Complete silence on the other end." "I don't know what you're talking about, Mom." "Of course you do. I know about the medication you were giving me to make me think I had dementia. I know you wanted to steal my savings. And I know you planned to leave me locked up in that home until I died." Each word was like a hammer striking a nail. "Mom, you're delusional. You need urgent medical help." But her voice was trembling. "The only one who needs help is you, Chloe, because what you did to me is a federal crime. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just trying to take care of you." I handed the phone back to Mark. "Miss Chloe, this is Attorney Mark Gable. I legally represent your mother. I suggest you come to my office this afternoon at 3 o'clock to discuss this situation civilly." I could hear protests on the other side. "Yes, your mother has legal representation now. And yes, we are fully aware of the criminal implications of what has been happening." After hanging up, Mark looked at me with a smile. "They're panicking. That's good for us. Do you think they'll come?" "They'll come. They have no choice. If they don't, we file the criminal complaints immediately." We spent the morning preparing our case. Mark had contacted a lab to analyze the pills they had been giving me. He had also arranged for an independent doctor to examine me to confirm I had no dementia or any other cognitive issues. "Dr. Peterson is coming at 11, Mark explained. "He'll do a full evaluation of your mental state. We need official documentation that you are perfectly competent." "What if Dr. Evans says otherwise?" "Dr. Evans is going to have a lot of questions to answer. His evaluation was clearly fraudulent." Dr. Peterson arrived promptly. He was an older man with white hair and a calming presence. "Mrs. Morales, I understand you've been through a very difficult situation." He examined me for 2 hours, asking questions about my personal history, my memory, my reasoning ability. "Your cognitive functions are completely normal," he informed me at the end. "There is no evidence of dementia, mental deterioration, or any condition that would affect your ability to make decisions." His words were music to my ears. "Can you put that in writing?" "Of course. I will prepare a detailed report." At 2:30, Betty arrived with more evidence. She had been watching my house and had taken photographs of Chloe and Kevin going in and out with boxes. "They're taking things out," she informed me. "I think they're trying to sell your belongings before you get back." "Perfect," Mark said. "That gives us more evidence of their criminal intent." He reviewed the photos Betty had taken. "This clearly shows them looting your property without authorization." At exactly 3 o'clock, Chloe and Kevin arrived at Mark's office. I watched from the window as they got out of their car. Chloe looked terrible, with dark circles under her eyes and disheveled hair. Kevin walked with that aggressive stride that had always unsettled me. They stormed into the office. "Where is my mother?" Chloe demanded without a greeting. "She's here, in the conference room," Mark replied calmly. "She's fine. She's perfectly fine. In fact, she's better than she's been in months. When they walked into the conference room and saw me sitting there, completely lucid and alert, their faces were a picture. The surprise in Chloe's eyes was genuine. It was as if she were seeing a ghost. "Mom? You look different." "I look the way I've always looked, Chloe. I'm just not pretending to be confused anymore." Kevin got straight to the point. "I don't understand what's happening here, but my mother-in-law has a diagnosed case of dementia. She needs to return to the home immediately." "Your mother-in-law does not have dementia," Mark replied, placing Dr. Peterson's report on the table. "Here is the independent medical evaluation that confirms it." Kevin read the document with growing panic. "This is impossible." Dr. Evans confirmed the diagnosis. "Dr. Evans is going to have to explain how he arrived at such an erroneous diagnosis," Mark said coldly. "Chloe," I said, looking directly at my daughter, "do you know what was really in those vitamins you gave me?" Her face turned pale. "They were normal vitamins, Mom." "No, they weren't. We're having them analyzed at an independent lab. Soon we'll know exactly what substances you were administering to me without my knowledge." "This is ridiculous," Kevin interjected. "You people are confusing a sick old woman." "The only one confused here was me," I replied. "Confused because I trusted you. Confused because I believed my own daughter loved me." Mark opened a folder and took out several documents. "We have evidence of multiple crimes, unauthorized administration of substances, elder abuse, fraud, unlawful confinement, theft." Each word was like a slap. "Theft?" Chloe protested. "We never stole anything." "Oh, really? And what about these photographs of you removing my belongings from my house?" Mark placed the photos Betty had taken on the table. "What exactly were you doing?" Kevin stood up abruptly. "We don't have to listen to this. Let's go, Chloe." But Chloe didn't move. She was staring at the photographs with a look of horror, as if she were just now realizing what they had been doing. "Sit down, sir," Mark ordered Kevin, "because I have something else to show you." He placed a small audio player on the table. "This is a recording of the conversation you had in the car on the way to the nursing home." He pressed play, and Kevin's voice filled the room. "Once she's admitted, we can search the house properly. We can also hire someone to check if she has other bank accounts." Kevin's face turned red with fury. "Where did you get that?" he roared. "That's a violation of privacy." "Your mother-in-law had every right to record conversations about herself," Mark replied, "especially when those conversations revealed criminal plans." Chloe finally spoke, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, I didn't want to. Kevin told me it was the only way." "The only way to what?" I asked. "To rob me? To destroy my life?" "It wasn't my idea," she suddenly shouted. "It was all his idea. I didn't want to hurt you." Kevin looked at her furiously, but the damage was done. She had just confessed. "Shut up, Chloe." Kevin growled at her, but it was too late. The words were already out. "He told me it was the only way to get money fast," Chloe continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He said you wouldn't even notice." Mark smiled. He had just gotten a full confession. "I think we have everything we need," he said. "Do you want to resolve this civilly, or would you prefer we press criminal charges?" The war was over, and I had won. Chloe's confession changed everything in that conference room. I watched as Kevin looked at her with a hatred he had never shown so openly before. His perfect plan had completely unraveled, and now his own wife had betrayed him. "You idiot," he hissed at her through his teeth. "You just ruined everything." "It was already ruined," I answered before Chloe could speak. "From the moment you decided to drug an old woman to steal her savings, my voice was stronger than it had been in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely myself." Mark turned off the recorder and leaned back in his chair. "Well, now that we have a recorded confession, we can proceed in one of two ways. We can go directly to the district attorney with all this evidence, or we can reach an agreement that will keep you two out of prison." Kevin stood up violently, knocking over his chair. "This is extortion." "No, sir. This is justice," Mark replied calmly. "Your mother-in-law has the right to seek compensation for the damages you caused." "What kind of agreement?" Chloe asked, her voice breaking. Her tears seemed genuine, but they no longer moved me. She had cried too many fake tears in front of me for me to believe her remorse. "First," Mark said, "you will return everything you have taken from Mrs. Morales's house. Every object, every document, every cent." "We haven't taken any money," Kevin protested. "Because there was no money to take," I replied with a smile. "Are you wondering where my real savings are?" Kevin's expression confirmed they were still hoping to find my money somewhere. "My savings are perfectly safe, in accounts you will never be able to touch." His face contorted with rage. "Where?" "That is no longer your concern." "Second," Mark continued, "you will sign a full confession of your actions, admitting to the abuse, the manipulation, and the attempted fraud." "And third?" Chloe asked. "Third, you will compensate Mrs. Morales for emotional damages and legal expenses." "How much?" $50,000, Mark replied. It was a significant amount, but not impossible for them to get. "We don't have that kind of money," Kevin shouted. "Then you'll have to find it," I said coldly. "Just like you planned to do with mine." "And if we agree to all that?" Chloe asked. "Then we don't press criminal charges," Mark replied. "But there is one more condition." He placed a restraining order on the table. "You are to have no contact with Mrs. Morales ever again. No calls, no visits, no contact of any kind." Chloe's expression completely crumbled. "Never again? I can't even talk to my mother?" "You lost that right when you decided to poison me," I replied. "A daughter who is capable of drugging her own mother to steal from her is not really a daughter." "Mom, please. Don't call me Mom. You no longer have the right to call me that." The words came out with a coldness that surprised even me. But it was necessary. I had to cut all ties with these people who had tried to destroy my life. Kevin finally spoke, his voice full of venom. "This isn't going to end here, old woman. We'll find a way to—" "To what?" I interrupted him. "To hurt me more? To try to kill me? Because that's what you were doing, wasn't it?" "You were killing me slowly." "That wasn't our intention," Chloe began to say. "Of course it was your intention. You wanted me to die confused and alone in that home so you could take everything I had worked for 73 years. My voice rose, all the pent-up rage finally coming out. "You have 1 hour to decide," Mark announced. "You either accept the agreement or we press criminal charges this afternoon." He stood up and opened the conference room door. "You can use the waiting room to discuss it." After they left, I sat in silence for several minutes. It was all over. After weeks of terror, manipulation, and humiliation, I was finally in control of the situation. But the victory felt bittersweet. I had won, but I had lost my daughter in the process. "Are you okay?" Betty asked, taking my hand. "I'm better than okay," I replied. "I'm free. Do you think they'll accept the agreement? They have no choice. Kevin is a coward, and Chloe is too scared to risk going to jail." 45 minutes later, they returned to the conference room. Chloe's eyes were red from crying, and Kevin looked defeated. "We accept," he mumbled, "all the conditions." Mark had prepared all the documents. They signed the full confession, the restitution agreement, and the restraining order. They also committed to returning all my personal items by the end of the week. "The money?" Mark asked. "We'll get it," Kevin replied. "We have a week, right? 1 week exactly. If not, we file the charges automatically." When they finished signing everything, Chloe looked at me one last time. "Mom, Eleanor, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say." Apologies weren't going to erase what they had done to me. They left without another word. I watched from the window as they got into their car and drove away. It was the last time I would ever see them, and strangely, it didn't cause me sadness, only relief. A week later, I received a check for $50,000. I also got all my belongings back, including the jewelry Kevin had tried to sell. The lab analysis confirmed the vitamins contained sedatives and drugs that could cause long-term confusion and memory loss. I returned to my house, which now felt truly mine again. Betty helped me rearrange everything and change the locks. "You're not lonely?" she asked me. "Not at all," I replied. "I feel at peace." A month later, I decided to do something I had never considered before. I donated half of the compensation money to an organization that helped victims of elder abuse. There are many people like me, I explained to the organization's director. People who aren't lucky enough to discover what's being done to them in time. I also changed my will completely. I left my house and my savings to charitable organizations and to Betty, who had been more of a family to me than my own daughter. Chloe and Kevin would not receive a single cent. 6 months later, I learned from the newspapers that Kevin had been arrested for scamming other senior citizens. Apparently, what he had done to me was not an isolated case. He had been running a scheme to rob elderly people for years. Chloe had filed for divorce immediately. That news confirmed I had made the right decision. I had not only saved my own life, but I had helped expose a criminal who was hurting other vulnerable people. Now, sitting in my garden in the afternoons, watering the roses my husband planted so many years ago, I feel completely at peace. I lost a daughter, but I regained my dignity, my freedom, and my life. Sometimes Betty asks if I miss Chloe. The answer is complicated. I miss the little girl I raised, the young woman who graduated from college thanks to my sacrifices. But that person no longer exists.